welcome to a new edition of the Saturday Night Horror Movie Club. So tonight's choices are varied and very, very different. We have The Town That Dreaded Sundown, Brooklyn, a psychotic slasher, The Lighthouse, The Void, what was the other one?
Cold Skin?
Cold Skin. And was there one more?
Mohawk.
And Mohawk. As always, we're going to go to the Wheel of Fate to decide our destiny. And tonight we're hoping that we'll end up with a better destiny than we got when we watched Robert and the Toymaker. So here is the Wheel.
Can only go up there.
What's that?
It can only go up from there.
Yeah, it can only go up from Robert and the Toymaker. Here is the Wheel of Destiny. Okay. The Wheel of Fate has decided it will be The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson.
This feels appropriate for this movie.
Who, of course, is also the new Batman. This should be interesting because light, color, out of space, there seems to be no middle ground for The Lighthouse. So, we will come back in just a little bit.
I will mention, I'm the only one who's seen it. Joe, have you seen it? No. So I'm the only one who's seen it. I did enjoy it. But I won't say a whole lot about the movie other than the fact that we have brandy and whiskey is a fitting choice for this.
Okay.
And I'm curious to see what you guys think of it. I agree that to hear that there's no middle ground, I'm not surprised.
Great. So we'll come back with our initial thoughts. All right. So here are our early impressions of The Lighthouse, starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe.
Birds are jerks.
Birds are jerks. Mr. McDonough, like I'm one of your students. Tom, why don't you give us your early reaction so far?
Well, so far it's filmed in black and white, so it's definitely a different vibe going on. I like the isolation that has been casting, that they're lighthouse keepers on a New England island in the late 1890s, I understand it. So you already have this isolation factor, and I think it's kind of setting the stage pretty good.
Well, I've seen it before, so I'll let you guys go.
Okay. I would agree with Tom. I like the restrained nature of it. Also, too, I'll have to be honest, I've never seen Robert Pattinson in anything. Of course, we all know he was Edward Cullen in Twilight. But I would have to say, having never seen Twilight, I mean, this, and I know he's done a bunch of other movies since then. This very obviously differentiates him from that. You know, I mean, he's playing a role. He's immersing himself in the character. I would agree that we've got a nice setup, a nice atmosphere. My question is this going to be one of those movies where at the end of the movie I'm like, I really admire this movie, but I don't enjoy this movie? You know how that goes? Like, we admire the aesthetic, we admire the cinematic techniques, but can we really say we had fun watching this movie? I'm not sure. Of course, that's a huge philosophical question as to whether or not movies are for us to have fun with or not, and that's a question we cannot answer in the time we have to us. But we will see how I feel about this about halfway through. Joe, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, yeah, it's about 20 minutes of just atmosphere building, really. You know, they haven't really established any sort of, I guess, greater plot to what's going to happen in the movie besides, I don't know, maybe it'll be 2 hours of just atmosphere, you know.
We'll see. I mean, some of the previews showed Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe, like, dancing in a circle and, like, dumping brandy over each other. So at some point, maybe this thing will go Mother. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Mother, but that's a movie that goes from, like, atmosphere to, like, what the hell's going on in very short order. So maybe that's what will happen. So we'll check back with you.
I will say this.
Sorry.
I will mention this because, again, I've seen it before. But the movie is not just black and white. I think they made stylistic choices to try and make it feel like an old-fashioned movie.
Okay,
There's a lot of static shots.
Yeah.
It feels very old.
Yep.
Other than the fact that they're keeping themselves entertained with a little Small Mermaid. That's not something that you would see in an old movie. And the birds are jerks. So,
Yeah,
but
birds.
it has a classic cinema feel to it.
So we'll come back to you about halfway through the movie and let you know our thoughts there. Okay, here we are in the Saturday Night Horror Movie Club, the halfway mark of The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson.
And seagulls.
And seagulls who are also jerks.
They're all jerks in this movie.
Tom, what are your quick thoughts halfway through the movie so far?
Okay, it's definitely a slow burn movie, which usually I enjoy as long as the payoff is pretty good.
That's the key,
And
right?
as I said, with the atmosphere, I like that. However, I'm not too thrilled with the concept of 4 weeks is too long for any guy that they have to start getting into disgusting things. So, Chuck, what do you think?
They're desperate. I'll pass it along since I've seen it before, but I'll pass it along to you guys.
Okay, so I have mixed feelings at this point. First of all, again, as I said in the beginning of the movie, this is going to come down to that whole, at the end of the movie, do I admire it? Did I enjoy it? Certainly admire the aesthetic, the idea of making it black and white, a lot of atmosphere building. There's a little surreal, as Tom was joking about, men being on their own for 4 weeks at a time. Certain hormonal tensions are building up. Hallucinations about mermaids, possibly self-pleasuring to a little scrimshaw carving of a mermaid.
It's only the 1800s. What can you do?
Put it
It's like
this
they're
way. At this point,
JCPenney.
we have the potential for this thing to just go into WTF land, and for us to be like, what's going on? Okay, and I kind of hope it does go that way, because right now I think I admire the film. I'm not sure if I enjoy it. Also, a quick note: I think this is one of those things where you're never going to get a good answer to this.
Joe.
Oh, I'm not done yet.
He's not
Of course you're not done.
yet.
I
Okay.
haven't heard from
See.
Joe for forever. Come on.
Okay. So the accents, the dialogue. Do we have to make the accents time specific, or time Pacific? Do we have to make the accents time specific, or can we just make the accents straightforward and let the audience do the work? Now, as a writer, I don't know how many times I've been advised that, listen, a heavy accent in your writing is going to turn off readers. If you just set the setting, then readers can fill in the accent on their own. So I guess this is one of those things for viewers. Do we need Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson to be speaking in this very heavy, hard to understand accent? Or if we just set the setting and have them play it straight, will viewers fill that in on their own? That's kind of like right now, I'm going to be honest and say I'm struggling a little bit with the accent. Joe, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I'm just.
Go ahead and be honest.
He's hanging on.
Go ahead and be honest.
Joe's tired.
This
so
is a very relaxed group here.
I'm just falling asleep over
Yeah.
there.
Oh!
Yes.
It might be a lot of things, but the black and white doesn't really help, I don't think.
Okay.
That's a good point.
And so far we had a few scenes of masturbation and one tentacle, so I don't know where that's going, and a hallucination.
I know where that tentacle's going.
Yeah, and a hallucination about a topless mermaid. So we're going to check back with you.
Well, I'll chip in here.
Okay.
So my opinion of the accents, I love it in this movie, but then again, I love the historical aspect of it. That was actually one of the reasons I watched it in theaters, is because I'm writing 1890s Gothic horror, and even though it's not in the same setting, this movie was made to be realistic in terms of the dialogue of 1890s Maine. And so I watched it both from an entertainment standpoint of horror, but also from an educational standpoint of the language. I actually went with a notebook, checking some of the the slang and the dialogue of the era. So I actually do like that. For me, you can go heavier on an accent in a movie because the actors can fill in and you can draw more easily out of it. Whereas on a page, you don't have someone speaking it. So it's much more easy to get lost when the accent is on a page. So I get that you have to tone it down in writing versus in a movie. But the other thing is, with it comes, it has to be written in a way that people interpret it.
Okay.
You can go further in a movie. You can go further in cinema because you have a lot of physical action that's there as well to help you understand it. People are kind of speaking along. You can kind of glean the understanding of what the lines are. But whether it's a movie or a book, ultimately the question is, can the audience understand it enough to know what's going on? And that's what it has to be. I like that they go towards the accent. I like that they go towards the dialogue that's realistic of the era. But at the end of the day, we have to understand what's going on. I think they do that. One other thing I'll mention is you had mentioned this before, Kevin, that some people had commented on Lovecraft, and they had associated Lovecraft with this movie. I don't think Lovecraft is the best comparison. I think Lovecraft's name gets thrown around as a classic, creepy, psychological horror. His name just becomes the default.
Lovecraft.
Yes, Lovecraft. Everything's Lovecraftian. I don't think this movie is Lovecraftian. The name I come up with is Algernon Blackwood.
Yeah,
I think it's way more like Algernon Blackwood. It's way more like The Willows. That's much closer to what you're going to find with this movie.
And just for the fun of it, I'm going to disagree slightly with CW on this. At this point, I feel like I should turn the captions on. Because I'm really having a hard time finding the dialogue, but that's okay.
That could also be the amount of this.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. There's times where I'm like, Willem Dafoe said what? So, and again, I do stress that's one of those artistic questions that there's no answer to. There's so many. It's so subjective. Do we want to be artistically true, or do we want to really engage the audience? And then, how do you define what engages the audience? But anyway, so we'll check back toward the end of The Lighthouse. Okay, so this is our final comment before the movie is over. We've got about 30 minutes left. Tom, what are your thoughts as we go into the home stretch?
Now, I can make some jokes here, but I see this more as a drama than a horror movie.
Okay.
And I'm not against that, but there have been some very weird things going on here.
Yeah.
And I swear it's just cross between fart and masturbation jokes.
A lot of farting, a lot of masturbating so far.
All right, that's
That's accurate.
All right, so we're starting to progress into WTF land. We can definitely see the surreal, Robert Pattinson thinks he's only been there for a couple days, and it turns out he's been there a lot longer. His grasp on reality is starting to slip.
I think our grasp as viewers is also starting to slip where we're not sure what's going on.
So once again, I think what Tom said earlier, with a movie like this, what's the payoff? At the end of the day, we can tolerate a lot of obscure atmosphere building, surreal nature, but at the end of the day, do we have a payoff? What's going to happen here toward the end?
Yeah, this ends with the whole "it's just a dream." Then I'm going to smash the television.
Yeah,
I will buy you a new TV, Kevin. I will buy you a new TV.
Will it be a bigger TV? Anyway,
Sure.
so that'll be that's actually a really good point. What'll be really interesting is the ending of this movie. Are we going to have a tangible ending here, or is this going to be one of those endings that's like left over interpretation? Is it going to be a whole hallucination? I'm afraid this is probably not going to happen. He's, shall we say, had some intimate fantasies about him and a mermaid. I'd love it if the mermaid was real, and had a very visceral presence at the end of the movie.
Smells like fish.
Yeah, I'm worried. Like the mermaid, as in AKA from Cabin in the Woods. This will be one of those things where, like,
Merman.
yeah, this will be one of those things where if the mermaid's just a hallucination the whole time, I might be a little disappointed. Joe, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I knew a little bit about what the movie was going to be about, that there wasn't going to be like a sea monster or ghosts or like your like loud horror elements. But so far, I've just been sleeping through most of it.
So what that means is the next meeting of Saturday Night Horror Movie Club is we're going to make sure all of our choices are high pay, action packed and high paced.
Either that or I have to bring a 5-hour energy shot.
Yeah, one of the two. So this is our last check-in. The next time we will talk to you will be our final thoughts on The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Okay, the Saturday Night Horror Movie Club has come to the conclusion of The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. I do have to warn you before we go into a review, this review is colored by several shots of maple whiskey, blackberry brandy, sweet baby java, and peanut butter whiskey and bourbon barrel aged beer. So keep that in mind.
I didn't get any peanut butter.
Mr. McDonough, Tom McDonough, start us off with The Lighthouse.
He has strong
What
opinions.
a lie. What a lie was this movie. First of all, it is not horror. It is not horror. It's not even that psychological. It is two guys who like to be on an island and whack off. I'm sorry, everyone was trying to make this so artistic. As far as I'm concerned, oh my god, it was terrible. Chuck, you recommended it.
Oh,
My recommendation is don't see this movie. I'm done.
For all of our potential subscribers who may have just unsubscribed right now, I apologize. Chuck, go ahead, please.
I'll finish. I've seen it before, so I'll let you guys go. So you guys are seeing it for the first time.
Okay, so as always, I play the counterpoint to Mr. McDonough or Tom McDonough's, his very unfiltered review.
Oh, Jesus, come on. You hated it too.
No, I didn't hate it, but as I was saying throughout my review of the whole movie, like, you have a dividing line. Movies I admire aesthetically, movies I really enjoyed. I admired this movie. I thought that Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe really sank into the roles. I thought the black and white shooting was very surreal. It's very believable to think that two guys who are stranded on an island, isolated, running a lighthouse, would eventually go crazy, because I know I would.
And start masturbating.
Yeah.
All over.
Well, okay, so let's not even be dirty here, okay? Sexual tension and isolation, this is a real thing. Okay, we could turn this into a bathroom joke if we wanted to, but
the movie already did it that.
Let's be really honest here. I mean, the idea that men are isolated and they're building up sexual tension, it's a biological fact. The buildup of testosterone, it's a biological fact, the need for release. So we could totally be like really juvenile here and be like, oh, boil it down to jerk off jokes. But no, that's a really important part of the movie, that you're isolated, you have no source of relief, and you're driven to excess and driven to fantasy, and having to find a way to release that tension, and having no one to connect with, because sex is a very intimate thing, and if you have no one to connect with, you are driven to this kind of self-abusive way of relieving that tension. I mean, Tom's laughing over here, but seriously, that's a really potent thing there. So we could boil this down to.
There's the whiskey.
And he is, but we could boil this down to.
He just blew up your serious talk.
Quiet, you. We could boil this down to William Dafoe and Robert Pattinson jerking off for an hour and a half.
That's what it was. That's all this movie was. I'm sorry. There was no redeeming arc. There was no redeeming arc here. Okay, well, I say halfway through the first half of the movie looked like a slow burn, but in the end, it was just some bullshit. It was just some Hollywood guys need to blow their loads constantly. I'm sorry. That's all it gave us.
Yeah, there's like no really backstory that you get for the old guy, right? I mean,
No.
we kind of have an idea of who the young guy is trying to run from his past.
Right.
And all that, and he finally can't handle it, and he ends up killing the old guy.
Well,
The old guy, we don't really.
Willem Dafoe, it's hidden behind the accent. He does get into the fact that he lost his wife because he's been so addicted to the life at sea, and that's what he's been drawn to. And so he's lost that connection with human contact, and basically he's become almost a victim of the sea in one regard. He's become
Was
that
he actually
slave.
a sea captain or go out on sea? Because
They're actually not clear on that, because at the end they're actually saying, like, Robert Pattinson saying he's a liar. We actually don't know how much he's lied about. He said he was a captain, and then he lost that role because of his leg. But Robert Pattinson's accusing him of being a liar because the movie goes down that trippy lane, that WTF lane at the end. We're actually not sure how much of it is a lie and how much of it isn't.
Yeah, it's like the unreliable narrative.
It's definitely an unreliable narrative.
Friction.
So there's Tom's thoughts, by the way. Kevin, can you finish yours? You're recovering.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Tom pretty much just blew, and we don't want to joke about blue, but he pretty much blew holes through my argument. I guess this is the the argument about art that you'll never be able to solve. There's my perspective that this sexual tension is a real thing, and it's a stressor, and Tom's perspective that they're just all whacking off. Who's right, me, Tom, or I? Don't know. Joe, did you have any other thoughts besides the ones you expressed to us?
Yeah. I just lost it.
It's very late, by the way.
It is super late. Well, I'll go.
It didn't
I'll
hold
go.
your attention.
Oh yeah, it held my attention at the end. That kind of like woke me up. All the action, everything that was going on. It was interesting trying to follow like who's telling the truth, who's lying. Is there actually any
Who's
supernatural
knuckle
elements to the story?
That's
That's
true.
what I was trying to get. I think I would have enjoyed the movie more if there was some supernatural like elements that they kind of like went back to.
Yeah, 'cause
Instead of just it's in their heads. They're crazy.
Yeah, we don't know. There's obviously a level of they're crazy. We don't know how much of it is craziness
Yeah.
and how much of it is real. I will say this, in terms of I mentioned the music reminds me of Twilight Zone. The musical score reminds me of Twilight Zone. The cinematography is very 1950s style, and I think that was intentional. It does bring back a classic cinema feel. That said, I don't actually go out seeking a lot of classic cinema because it's kind of blah. Sorry, it's just the way it is. I think there's some great stories, there's some great acting, but a lot of it just doesn't keep up. And I know some people love classic cinema. This one has some of those same trappings of kind of blah, but at the same time, too, it brings in some modern storytelling elements. That said, I love classic literature. I love classic horror. It's not always creepy. It's not always shocking. A lot of times it feels very dull compared to the flash and gore of modern horror. And there's a line that's there. There's a distinction. I think this one intentionally goes back to old school horror in cinematography and old school horror in storytelling. It feels, from a horror element, it feels way more like Edgar Allan Poe and Algernon Blackwood.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And this is
yeah.
stuff that's 100 years old or more. It's classic horror. There's not a lot that's getting in your face. There is the aspect of, from the modern aspect, it gets into the more mature themes of sexual tension that's there. And that shows up between them, but also in the general story that's there. There's this underlying current. That's where the modern element is in the subtlety of it, and in the more mature themes of, again, the sexual tension that's there. That's something that you wouldn't find in a classic horror story. They would sweep that under the carpet for the most part. So you get a little bit of modernity with the storytelling, but it's done in an old-fashioned storytelling style. It's not going to be a lot in your face. It's not going to be very exciting. It's not going to be pouring a lot of blood on the screen. There's something engaging about the old-fashioned stories, and that's something I enjoy. And I also realize it's not for everybody. Whether it's whether it's non-horror genre or the horror genre, old-fashioned stories just don't hold up for a lot of people, and that's fine. It's going to be a personal taste. This one here is done in the old-fashioned style, potentially to a fault. A lot of people aren't going to like it, and actually that's why it's kind
Tom's losing it already.
Tom's like,
whacking off. That's what it is.
So for me, I completely expect the movie and the opinions of the movie to be subjective and to be divisive. And actually, that's kind of why it was interesting to me as a suggestion, is because with four of us here, I completely expected it to not be a unanimous vote. And that's kind of fun to see how people react to the different elements, because there's things here that, there's a lot of parts that are, I'll be honest, dull. But it's engaging and it's extremely well acted through and through.
I'm totally sorry. I totally forgot how Bela Lugosi, before he bit his victim on the neck, relieved himself first.
So it's a weird movie, and I think that actually feeds into it, where it kind of, sorry to say it, but it kind of sticks with you. It's the movie there is
Masturbation jokes. It
gets into a really awkward place, and that's part of the horror where you feel uncomfortable because you're dealing with a very uncomfortable subject.
So anyway, to wrap up, Tom, out of 5 stars, what do we give the Lighthouse?
6 stars.
I am going to give it, can we do percentage, like a half?
Sure.
I will go 2.5 just because of the acting credit.
All right. Chuck.
I'll give it 4 out of 5, but it's going to be a movie where it's not to everyone's taste, and I completely understand that.
Okay. 4 out of 5 knuckle shuffles.
Joe.
Yeah, it's 3 out of 5. It's right middle of the road.
Okay. So I'm going to give a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely moments when I was really engaged. I was like, wow, what's going on here? Some slow moments. So 3.5. Anyway, depending on what your tastes are, The Lighthouse is currently on Amazon Prime for $5.99. Go check it out if you're interested. And again, I don't say this often enough. If you really like what we're doing, click on the little button down in the lower right-hand corner.
Oh, likewise. Or subscribe button.
No, there's a little subscribe button right there. It's a little subscribe button that says Into the Abyss. Go click on that, subscribe to Into the Abyss. Thank you for joining Saturday Night Horror Movie Club, and we will see you again soon.